Is it?
I have friends asking me like, oh, you're about to
I'm sure you didn't have to pay as much as they have to now.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
the parents that we
It was
never do as we do.
$225 a semester. Yeah. What is it?
Actually, well, I don't know. I know it's like, well, just for tuition that he sees, it's like,
Martina, are we ready?
it's like 13.
Okay.
Per year?
Just for tuition.
The meeting of the Tahoe Forest Hospital District is now called to order. I'd like to welcome all of you to our May Board of Directors meeting. And if I could have our clerk please do the roll call.
Director Barnett,
Present.
Director Shamblin,
Here?
Director Brown, here, Director McGeary,
Here.
Director Long.
Here. Are there any deletions or corrections to the posted agenda? Anything from our board, from the audience? Then I'll move on to item number 4, input from the audience. Do we have any audience here that wants to do input? Otherwise, I will pass on the little introduction I do give. And so if I could have the general counsel give us what's going to be covered in closed session.
Sure. There's 5 items that will be considered in closed session. The first is a hearing under Health and Safety Code 32155 on the first quarter 2023 corporate compliance report. Next, a hearing related to home health, hospice, and palliative care quality. Third is a conference with legal counsel, initiation of litigation, one potential case. Item 4 are regular and special closed session minutes from April 27th and May 10th. And a timed item at 5:30, medical staff credentialing under Health and Safety Code 32155.
Thank you so much for that. Then we'll go ahead and recess open session till 6 o'clock, and we'll go into closed session at this time. Can someone get the door?
Yeah, I'll stay on the telephone line here.
So Alice, we just need to give, them
Okay.
Bob?
Oh.
The mics.
Yep.
Now it's being recorded by TV, although.
Why are we not seeing the?
He's not here yet, we gotta get him in here.
No, he's here.
He's here, the power wasn't working earlier, so the TV's not on.
Okay.
Okay. So should I wait for him?
He's in there, he's ready.
Oh,
Okay. All right. Got it.
So start.
We're live.
okay. So we've called to order, despite what it looks like.
Is-
Bob off mute.
Okay. Can General Counsel give us the actions taken in closed session?
Yes, the board considered 5 items in closed session this evening, and I would refer you to the agenda, items 5.1 to 5.3. There was no reportable action. And for items 5.4 and 5.5, both of those were approved on a vote of 5-0. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any deletions or corrections to our posted agenda? Anything from our board? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on. And number 10 is input from our audience. I do want to let everybody know that we did receive several written comments for public input, and they were received by our clerk and then distributed to our board of directors. So all of those have been read. Do we have anybody who wants to give public comment? Okay, so again, we have some rules on public comments. You have 3 minutes, and this is on anything that's not on the agenda. I will give you a signal when your time is up. So welcome, Deirdre.
There, is it on now? Yeah, okay, good. So it's good to see you all again. My name is Deirdre Henderson. I am a Truckee resident, a patient here, and a leader of the Citizens Climate Lobby chapter here and of 100% Renewable Truckee. So I am here again to encourage the hospital district to join the Climate Transformation Alliance. It is a serious group. It just received $500,000 of philanthropic funding to support its work. Joining it would do 2 things for the hospital district. It would provide a source of information and collaboration on climate action, and information on unprecedented funding opportunities for accomplishing that. And it would also act as a demonstration to the community of your seriousness about addressing climate change and being good environmental stewards. Also, we know that you're busy with master plan matters at the moment, and in that connection, we want to encourage you to build greenhouse gas emissions reduction into the plan so that you will be able to show the community how you're working toward the community's climate pollution reduction goals. Sooner or later, the master plan will come before the town, and that process will be public and will involve public comment. We believe that serious emissions reduction is something that the community will be eager to see you demonstrate with your master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. And as you know, that we can't comment on anything because it was not agendized, but we will pass that word on to our staff. Is there any other audience input? Hearing none and seeing none, I will close audience input. Any input from our Employees Association? I don't see any employees per se, but we always give them an opportunity to provide us with information. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that item and move on to our Medical Staff Executive Committee report, and that's Dr. Koch.
Okay. Is this working now? Can I be heard well? Okay, great. So we have a consent agenda that has quite a few things on it this month. Most of the changes that we're talking about are related to the recent HFAP survey. So they are changes that were required by HFAP that we are instituting. The first policy change is the critical access hospital services that are provided. And there were the initial changes, which I know you all have a copy of, but the initial changes were just repositioning how it was worded so that HFAP was happier with it. But then in addition to that, we had failed to include palliative care, and we had to add a few changes to names, and then we had to add our telestroke and teleneurology program, as well as our telemedicine oncology program, as well as our telemedicine neonatal and pediatric ICU telemedicine, as well as our psychiatric telemedicine. So we had to add those all into the list of agreements that we have. And then finally, we had to include the telemedicine services for the Incline Hospital, as well as telestroke there. So that's the first section, and a part of that was also making clear what we are already doing, which is that the board oversees clinical contracts and the board oversees quality and performance improvement. And as I said, that's already being done, but it wasn't delineated clearly in the consent agenda before, and now it is. The second is the quality assessment and performance improvement plan, and this plan was again revised to meet the HFAP standards, and it makes it clear that the board is responsible for reviewing critical access hospital services and assess and monitor the the quality improvement activities. And again, the board is already doing these things, but this spells that out, that it's being done. The next policy is the, hang on,
Health record.
sorry. The legal health record. We had managed to leave lab off of the legal health record. And so we added lab in there. I believe that's the only change we made to that one, other than some minor revisions, again, to meet HFAP standards. The next one is that we have a rapid response team now, and HFAP requested that we modify the way it's written, so we made the changes that they recommended. That included clarifying that they can be called at any time, that a patient could benefit. It included listing some of the reasons for which patients might need it. It included adding that the house supervisor would be notified, as well as the ICU nurse, when a rapid response team is needed. And so those were the changes there. And then finally, the standardized procedures, nurses' refills. Nurses doing refills has been expanded significantly in order to assist the primary care providers. And so it's going to be a work in progress for a while. And right now, the changes that we're making are to addend the bridge requirements. When a patient has a need for a refill, they have an appointment, the nurse can make a bridge refill for them without needing to get authorized. And this is just expanding on that a little bit. And so there are also patients who have episodic recurrent treatments. The nurses are now able to do that. As we move forward slowly, we're expanding their privileges as we see the opportunity. And so that's the end of that one. And then finally, the privilege form for neurology is changed to allow them to write orders, but they will not be writing orders for controlled substances, so there won't be any concerns about DEA licenses in California and Nevada. They will just be mostly writing orders for procedures that they're going to do or order, or possibly medications related to the specific neurology diagnosis. Finally, there are policies, a long list of policies that have no changes other than to add the risk statement to them. And these are all in the rehab, physical therapy, occupational therapy category. There's a long list of them. So any questions on any of these?
And most of these are from HFAP or because we're expanding somebody's privileges.
Correct. Right. None of these are new policies, and none of these are major changes. These are all minor changes related to HVAP, and then incremental changes regarding the RN privileges.
Because it's a new role that they're in.
Correct.
Okay.
Does HVAP actually give you the proper wording and suggested changes?
They specify exactly how they want us to work things.
Exactly what you want. I would
So
imagine.
we will pass that on the next round.
Unless they change their story.
Right.
Okay. Mary, any,
I have a question after we deal with this.
Okay.
About HVAC.
okay. Director McGarry, any?
No,
Okay.
it's
And
straightforward.
Dale? Does our audience have any questions about the credentialing process? I'm sorry, I'm still in closed session.
Consent agenda.
The consent agenda. Okay, so hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for the medical staff as presented?
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Director McGarry, second by Director Brown, to approve the meeting consent agenda of the Medical Executive Committee. All in favor?
It's a roll call vote.
Oops,
Roll call. Yeah.
I can't see his face. I need a picture right here of him, so I know.
Bob, yeah.
So could I have a roll call, vote?
Yes.
Director Chambliss?
Yes.
Director Brown?
Yes.
Director McGarry?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes. So the agenda's been approved as
Excellent.
presented. Thank you so much for doing that, Dr. Koch.
And did Mary have a question for me regarding HVAC?
Just a general question, when you brought up HVAC, I was just wondering when we can expect to get a report about other findings from HVAC. June?
Janet's out of the country tonight.
Okay. That was my
Right.
question.
Okay, but we'll have that on the potentials, okay,
On the June calendar.
if she's back.
She's planning on it. She already
Okay.
gave that to me.
All right, great. Okay, then we'll move on to item 13, which is our consent calendar, and these are reports and non-controversial comments or papers. But there's a possibility that any of our board members can pull any of the reports that they would like to have further discussed. Do I have any ones that you want to pull? Does staff have any ones they want to pull? Does the audience have any questions about any of the reports? Okay. Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved. Dale?
I'll second, Michael.
Okay, so it's been moved by Director Shamblin, second by Director McGarry, that we approve the consent calendar as presented. Roll call vote.
Director Barnett?
Yes.
Director Chambliss?
Yes.
Director Brown?
Yes.
Director McGarry?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes. So the consent calendar has been approved. We'll move on to 14, which are items for board discussion, and this is going to be the meat of our meeting tonight. And our first item for discussion is Dr. Cooper and Addie Bixie, who are going to talk about our trauma program update. So welcome, ladies.
Okay, I've got a red light. So we've presented periodically, I think, to this group as the trauma program has grown. And we, I think, met a major milestone earlier this month, so we thought this was a good time to come back and share. I don't know if have you been here yet? This is Addie Brixey. She's our trauma program manager. She took over for Katie Clifford about a year ago. The ER was rude enough to steal Katie as their ED director, but that gave us the opportunity to bring Addie in, which has been a great growth and a great gift to the program. Let's see. Martina?
Did she turn it off? Look on the side.
Says it's on. Okay, we'll go next slide.
It wasn't you this time.
Not me, usually I'm the one. So as a reminder, why did we embark on this process? Why is a trauma program important to our community? And as we all know, our community is deeply intertwined with recreation and recreational sport. And unfortunately, people do get injured in sport. And so to serve our community and our visitors, we thought a higher level of care of the injured patient was critical. We also saw that our local recreation industry, like our ski resorts, were looking for a higher level of injury care and long-term injury prevention. And we were concerned that if we weren't able to meet that need, that they would go elsewhere, specifically down the hill. Our local EMS agency for years had recognized us as a gap in the care in trauma care. And so they were very excited to have us come on and fill this gap in our region. Historically, we've seen a lot of our community members brought immediately to the level 2 trauma center in Reno and then discharged uninjured late at night with no real follow-up or with minor injuries. And so one of our goals was to keep everybody in this community who we could keep in this community and care for them. Trauma was the original committee that the American College of Surgeons developed. It was actually a committee on fracture that started in the 1920s. And it's a nationwide committee that's committed to quality and providing the best possible care that we can. And Tahoe Forest, I think, has a long history of being committed to true quality. And we knew we can excel. We knew we were special and that we had opportunities for improvement, but that we could provide great care. Oh, it worked. So this started, it's 5 years ago that this started with, I think, important conversations with key stakeholders. Trauma is a complicated program. It touches every part of the pre-hospital, hospital, and post-discharge system. And so if everybody's not on board, it's not going to be successful. And so I think the hospital and the organization did a really excellent job of making sure that everybody was willing to take part in this early on. And I think that was critical for our success. We started developing the program in the spring of 2019, and we believed we were on the fast track. We had a great program. We had great staff. We were doing data collection in the summer of 2019. We were going to see our first site visit the summer of 2020. And then we all know what happened. And so that timeline was probably not over optimistic at the time, but a grenade went off in the middle of that timeline. But because of the commitment of our local EMS agency, in October of 2020, they designated us as a level 4 trauma center. That's a state designation. Not every state does that. But they came up and looked at how we were doing and said, yes, keep going. And that led to a national consultative visit in September of 2021, where we had a virtual visit. Everything's been virtual through this process, and they looked at everything and were very enthusiastic, and the state designated us as a level 3 trauma center for the state of California in the spring of 2022. And then just at the beginning of this month, we had our national verification visit. And it was very positive. And so we anticipate that we will be a nationally verified level 3 trauma center. Yeah. So a little bit about our patients. Who are we taking care of? The majority of our trauma patients are adults, 18 to 49. We do see a good portion of young children. If you look, our older population also represents a significant portion of our injured patients. This was all of our patients in 2022. And so we really see the spectrum, and I think one of the things we've seen is we are preparing for pediatric readiness in the ER and throughout the hospital, and we need to do that from a trauma point of view because we're seeing a good number of injured kids every year. Not surprising if you look at gender, men are more likely to be trauma activations than women. There was a little bit of a debate about whether that means that more men are out doing it or if they're just not as good as the women, so they get injured more often. But we don't have that exactly broken down. Interestingly, in national trauma data, it's more 1/3, 2/3 men and women. Ours is a little more men than women. Just a local variation. Mechanism of injury. We are not like everybody else, and this is where we focus. If you look at the majority of injuries we see, it's ski and snowboard injuries, bike crashes in the summer are close behind, and then everything else is sort of a handful of each. We do see horse injuries, we see ground level falls, we see our e-bike injuries, falls, all of those things, but really it's the meat of our injuries are our ski and snowboard injuries.
Dr. Cooper, when
Yes.
you last reported, ski and snowboard were 20%, and bikes were 27%.
Yeah.
So this looks like a pretty good shift.
So this, I believe that this data is because this was 2022, and if you remember, at the very end of 2021, we had an enormous snowstorm, and then we had 6 weeks of sunshine, and we were seeing countless people who were sliding 100 feet on ski slopes, 200 feet, slides for life, who were significantly injured. I bet for our 2023 data, because it was soft this year and consistently soft, I think we'll pull back on our ski and snowboard injuries a little bit, but we don't have that data fully yet.
Can you tell us what MCC and MVA are?
So MCC is motorcycle collision and MVA is motor vehicle accident.
Are e-bikes?
So e-bikes are part of bike crashes. I believe, and we are encouraging the National Data Repository to split those because the injuries, or to push them into motorcycle, because they're much more likely to be like motorcycle injuries rather than bike crashes.
Yeah, that diagnosis code doesn't exist yet. They just added one wheels, so we'll get to e-bikes.
Yeah.
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 One wheel.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Finally, where do our patients go after they arrive in our ER? As you can see, the majority of our trauma activations get discharged. That's typical. The goal of trauma is to over-triage people, to make sure you're not missing any life-threatening injuries. We transfer about 11%, 12% are admitted to our floor, 5% to our ICU, and 5% go to the OR directly from the ER. Now, when you look at us, this is a busy slide, but I've got us circled in green. If you look at the other level 3 and level 4 trauma systems in SSV, in our EMS region, we admit more patients, we operate on more of our patients, we send more of our patients to the ICU, we admit an equivalent amount to the floor, and we transfer fewer. So if you compare us to our nearest neighbors who are like us, we provide more care to the patients than the average level 3 and level 4 trauma center. So that's something we're proud of.
And when you talk neighbors, you're talking Barton?
This is actually, it's funny, Barton is not part of our EMS agency. This is right out in Marysville, St. Elizabeth's. It's a variety of things throughout Sacramento County.
Sacramento and Northern California. Yeah.
This is another thing we're really proud of. So TQIP data, TQIP is a trauma quality improvement project. It's run through the American College of Surgeons, and it's all these data points that you can compare yourself to your national and local partners to see how you compare to everyone else. And this slide represents how quickly you identify a patient that's too sick for your hospital and transfer them out. You want to be in the green box. The purple box is fine. The red boxes means that you're not meeting other people's needs. And we have consistently been very above average at getting sicker patients out of our hospital. And we know that with trauma care, time is survival. And so if a patient arrives here who does not who has more needs than our capacity, the most important thing we can do for that patient is transfer them to a higher level of care. And we've consistently shown that we are good at identifying those patients early, and our EMS partners are excellent at helping us get them to where they need to be. Okay, so on our verification visit, there were a number of strengths that our site visitors called out to us, and I just wanted to share a few of them. They were very impressed between the relationships between our hospital and our EMS agencies. We have many EMS agencies, and we work closely together. We have a good way of identifying opportunities for improvement and developing protocols that help drive the care of the patient. They called out, I have to brag about us, the general surgeons are committed to trauma care. They said it's unusual to only have 2 full-time surgeons and to admit most of the patients to the trauma service. So that was something they called out. They also, as we know, our nursing staff is spectacular, and there has been a high degree of engagement from our nursing staff on trauma education. They called out the presence of Dr. Andy Rignas. He is a trauma fellowship trained orthopedic surgeon. It is very unusual for a level 3 trauma center to have one, and to be a critical access hospital with an OTA trained orthopedic surgeon who is so engaged in the program is really spectacular. They also looked at, how quickly do we get our fractures to the OR, and we get them there quickly. We beat the national average by hours for our femur fractures. And so they were impressed that we have identified that we can care for these fractures, and that our system is there to support fracture care.
I think 100% of our femurs were fixed within 24 hours.
Which
so.
is, nobody gets that done, essentially. We've been developing injury prevention programs, and we focus on the identified needs of our community. So Addie's been out in the elementary schools this week talking about bike safety, because we see lots of kids making bad choices on bicycles. And there's definitely an opportunity for us to be engaged with the community.
And I'm really happy to report that on Nextdoor, if anybody goes on Nextdoor, somebody wrote a comment that there were 4 teenagers on e-bikes and they all used hand signals.
Oh, good.
This
Oh,
was
we're making
yesterday.
a difference.
I read it on Nextdoor, so
It must be true.
Yeah, it's got to be true, because I'm next door.
And then finally, we call every trauma patient who comes through our ER, either a medical assistant or a nurse calls that patient to see how they're doing and making sure that they're not having problems with arranging follow-up. We grade it based on the severity of injury and the complexity of needs, but we are following up every patient who's a trauma patient, and that is not always possible in a lot of bigger programs. Finally, they gave us some suggestions, or as we call them in trauma, opportunities for improvements. They see an expanded role for a PA or an NP on the trauma service to increase continuity for patients and provide more bedside care. We're in the process of doing that. They see our radiologists as really marquee and excellent quality, and so they suggest that we could increase their time that they read our images over the course into the evening, because that is when the majority of our trauma patients are getting their scans. That could increase accuracy and improve patient care. They see us as a growing organization, and they see the trauma program growing as the rest of the hospital is hoping to as well. And so they did comment on making sure we had adequate imaging equipment. And then as the program grows, they want to make sure that we have adequate staffing so that we can continue to provide this good care. And I think the trauma surgeon population is acutely aware of burnout as a loss of trauma surgeons. It's happened in the last 3 and 4 years, and so they want us to keep an eye on that so that we don't outgrow our staffing. So I liked this little picture because here are those people who are on the top of the mountain and they're really happy. But if you look like in the distance, there's more mountains to climb. And that's how we feel about trauma. This has been a big moment and we're excited about it, but we are full of projects and ideas of keeping our community here, providing a higher level of care, and continuing this process, making it better every day.
And I see you as the one in the middle.
I don't know about that. They're the wind beneath my wings, so.
I agree. And I just want to say, I joined this team about a year ago, and I feel very lucky that the people who came before me kind of like cleared this path and did all the really hard work. I have most ER nurse experience, and so I get to bring that now, the clinical piece, and I don't have to worry as much about like the regulations and all that kind of stuff. But Dr. Cooper's been doing this since the first day, and I just want to say, like, her commitment's been awesome. I know you only get like 0.25 FTE to do all this stuff, so all the, every time that I bother her and her days off, she's always very responsive. And it's really cool to represent Tahoe Forest in these community events and that kind of stuff. I actually grew up in Truckee. I was born in this hospital. So it's really kind of cool to come back and be able to represent Truckee and take care of our patients. So, yeah. Thank you guys. Do you guys have any questions about the data?
Dr. Cooper, do you want to take any credit for the success of the Winter Injury Symposium and the case studies?
No, I cannot. Casey Jowers, as the EMS medical director, that is his baby, and he has done amazing work. I'm always happy to participate, and I'm very supportive of it, but it is his. He does that.
I will pass along that to him, however.
Yeah. Great.
But we really appreciate what you have done, Dr. Cooper, in starting this and keeping it going and having the staff find joy in doing the program and seeing what you can do for patients. Yeah. So we are so grateful to you and helping raise that awareness in our community of what Tahoe Forest is able to do.
Thank you.
Can I retroactively ask a question? After you put that out there, do we know the number of patients that we are able to keep now at level 3?
That's a very hard question because we were not tracking that prior to this. Trauma is a lot about data collection. And so prior to this, there was no tracking, the EMS agencies were making decisions on the side of the road. And so we don't have that data. Now, I will tell you that from early on in the process, our trauma numbers have grown, and there's this thing called the injury severity score where we look at all the injuries and how severe they are, and we are keeping sicker and sicker patients. Our injury severity score is inching upwards slowly year by year. So we don't have exact data on it, but the signs point to the entire organization getting more comfortable with keeping sicker patients, not inappropriately sick patients, but just a little more every day.
Thanks again.
Any other comments? Bob, do you have anything to add or ask? This is Bob Barnett. Bob, are you there?
Went to dinner.
Yeah. Okay, you're going to pass up your chance, Bob. Anything from our audience in the meantime that you might want to ask about the trauma program?
We're very fortunate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we all agree with that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
thank you, guys. 4.2 is our peak program. We've got Damara Stone, who's going to tell us about this new one that we have.
I brought a packet for everybody.
How you doing?
Good, how are you? Alice?
Hi, thank you. Still warm.
Yeah.
Machine.
Thank you.
This one here?
Okay, thank you for having me. My name's Damara Stone. I'm the clinical education coordinator at the hospital, and I'm also a nurse. I've been here this month 22 years at the health system. Started with Alice back in the day. So I'm here to talk about the PEAK program and introduce the board to this program that was launched in October of 2022. So PEAK stands for Professional Excellence Advancement and Kudos, and is our custom evidence-based clinical ladder. So historically, we had, Tahoe Forest had a clinical ladder for nursing back a long time ago. And then somehow, I don't know the exact history of why it disappeared, but for most of the time that I've worked at the health system, we have not had a clinical ladder. For those of you who are unfamiliar with a clinical ladder, it is very common in health systems to have for nursing as a way to advance their career, increase their professionalism and their personal and professional development. So they've been around since the 70s, and almost all of our neighboring hospitals and health systems have them or have one. So St. Mary's, Barton, Renown, UC Davis, they all have a clinical ladder. So I felt that this was a missed opportunity for us to not have this. So the objectives of this clinical ladder are to elevate professional and personal development, and it gives an opportunity for nursing to be recognized for going above and beyond. And we have plenty of nurses that do that anyways, but there's a little bit of resentment if they feel that they're going above and beyond and not being recognized for it. And there's plenty of staff that now have this opportunity to increase their professionalism, and it's been really fun and exciting to see what people have brought forward. So it also provides a fair and systematic structure for recognizing excellence. It does enhance recruitment and retention. When you look through the literature, organizations that have a clinical ladder are much more appealing to nursing staff, and ultimately to promote our mission, vision, and values. So I based this clinical ladder on Patricia Benner's novice to expert model, And this model describes a nurse's journey from a novice nurse just out of school all the way up to an expert nurse. And so the program is based on that. And you'll see we have 3 tiers to our ladder. Tier 1 is Martis Peak, and that corresponds with the competent nurse, because we don't hire novice nurses here at this time. So we start with the competent. And then they can move up the ladder to Mount Judah, which is level 2, which corresponds with the proficient level. And then Mount Rose is level 3 for the expert nurse. And each of these, the nurse has to gain points. And I'll show you the 4 different categories. So the pillars of the program are these 4 categories, and these are based on our nursing mission and vision statements. So the nurse that engages in this program has to gain a certain number of points in each of these 4 categories. So caring, compassion, competency, community, family, and then quality evidence-based practice. And there's a minimum amount that they have to reach in each. And this is, you can see more in the packet that I gave you, but each category has a whole bunch of different opportunities that they can engage in to gain points. And then, of course, they're very creative people, and they come up with all sorts of wonderful ideas that I haven't listed. So they meet with me, and we talk about other opportunities. So my initial goal, when I rolled this out in October, was to have 10 to 20% participation, or about 28 to 56 of our nurses. And then this year, year 2, I am hoping for 20 to 25% RN participation, which would be 56 to 70 nurses. And so in October of 2022, which was the launch of the program, we had 62 applicants, which was 22%, which was really exciting. So met and exceeded that goal. They can only apply for the program twice a year during open enrollment, which is October and March. And those are the 2 months where they can also submit their completed portfolio. So March of 2023 was really exciting, because this was going to be our first group of the Summit team. 23 of them reached Peak 1 in Martis Peak in March. 15 just kind of didn't really participate. They applied, and then I think life got busy and they decided not to do it. 9 withdrew from the program, and then 15 decided to keep working on that first level and are going to submit their portfolio in October. So currently, 22 of that Martis Peak original Summit team are climbing towards Peak 2, Mount Judah. We have 11 new applicants for Peak 1, so there's 25 nurses total on the trail towards Peak 1, and 48 total RNs in the Peak program right now, so 17%, which is, I'm very excited about. So this is just shows the different departments that are participating. The Cancer Center has a lot of nurses. Almost everybody is represented, including Incline, including our MSC clinics. There's, ICU, med-surg. I would like to see a few more participants from some of our inpatient units, but this is where we are right now. And here's just a few examples of some of the projects that they came up with. Again, there was so many really interesting and creative things, but this is just a few of them. Everything from, creating patient education materials, engaging with their colleagues as doing care for the caregiver activities. One that I didn't list here that I thought was really great is one of the Cancer Center nurses. She downloaded a guided meditation for anxiety and calm, and she created a QR code and put them in all of the waiting rooms in the Cancer Center. So when you're sitting there, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but they don't have magazines anymore, I think since COVID. Okay. Oh, okay, good. But she put that up there as a way and with a breathing exercise. So patients and family members that are feeling anxious before their appointment, they can download this breathing exercise to practice while they're waiting. So there was just all sorts of fun and interesting things that people have come up with. And The beautiful thing too is many managers, directors, and other people in the health system have all sorts of projects that they need help with. And before the PEAK program, it was really hard to get people to be engaged and participate in these projects. And now I've created a help wanted board on our intranet page to link people with projects. So different staff members, managers can post a project that they need help with, and then the PEAK participants can look down the line, and if they see something that they're interested in. Right now, we have a PEAK participant who is doing a whole bunch of research about translation services and seeing what we can do differently for our Spanish-speaking population. So there's a lot of needs that are being met. I love this quote, my participation in the PEAK program has been refreshing and validating. I am reminded that I have a wealth of knowledge and experience within my area of specialty, and that I am a valuable resource to my patients, my team, TFHD, and the community. I have a renewed excitement for my profession, and I am inspired to take a more active interest in projects, join new committees, and collaborate more closely with my peers to improve the level of care for our patients. Additionally, it feels good to finally be recognized for going above and beyond. And I have a number of quotes, as you can see, like that. I asked when I met with all of the PEAK participants to do a self-reflection on how this program has enhanced their professional and personal development, and these are some of the direct quotes from the staff members. So across the board, they were all very happy with it. They did have, some opportunities for improvement, and so we are continuously improving this program, but it just launched, so I'm pretty excited about it. Okay. That's it. Any questions?
Lots of questions.
Oh, good, okay.
In one of your last statements, someone wrote that they're so happy they're being recognized for their work. And how are they being recognized?
So there is a financial incentive. So for reaching each of the peaks, it can, is a bonus structure. So they get a financial bonus. We also, highlight them in the pace setter, and we're talking about doing some sort of, whether it be an ice cream social or some sort of, gathering where they get recognized as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to be happy and joyful that you're doing something that you like or that you see value in, but it's also nice to be recognized.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we're still in the process of do we want to get a special badge buddy or a button or, some sort of something that visibly shows that they are part of the PEAK program. So we're still working on that.
I think in the clinical letter they'd have staff nurse 2, staff nurse 3, and that tells you where you are on the clinical ladder.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Any other comments from our board?
I'm just blown away.
Yeah, no, it's
I
great.
think this is so exciting, and we'll look forward to getting more information as they climb that.
As they keep climbing, yeah.
that peak.
And on Nurses' Day is a great day to start recognizing them as well.
Yeah.
I just had a couple of quick I'll just turn that off. I just had a couple of quick cons. One, I didn't want to come up here with Tamara because this has been all her. She has done this, and it is remarkable. It has changed our organization. It's re-engaged our nursing staff. And so I'm super proud of Tamara for doing this. She did this as, she originally started this as part of her master's degree. And we've been the beneficiaries of that degree. So I'm really proud of Tamara and all the work that's gone into this. We are actually looking to expand this to non-nursing.
Yeah.
So we're looking at how we can take this structure and put it in non-nursing areas so that those folks can grow and learn and do more things as well. So I just wanted to give you that extra update.
I do have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned about
Code pink, OB, code pink, OB, code pink, OB.
It's a baby.
Code pink, OB, code pink, OB, code pink, OB.
Dad got too close to the door.
Yeah, Dad got too close to the door.
Code pink, OB, code pink, OB, code pink, OB.
So we're supposed to guard the doors?
That's
Yeah,
what they're doing.
that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually a dad got too close to the door. But you had a question?
Yes, you mentioned that the inpatient nursing staff has not been as engaged. And I'm wondering if that's, if they have as many opportunities as the nurses in-house, or?
That is a really good question, and I think for me, it will come to having more interaction with the managers. I've found that the managers that have come from organizations with clinical ladders and have experience with it themselves have been actively promoting it with their staff. Some of the other departments, it just has been less promoted. So that is something to work with the managers. And then also, I don't know if maybe those staff members are more burnout or more, tired and don't want to take on anything else right now. It is a voluntary program, and so I think some of those staff members that work the 12-hour shifts and they've got families and kids and all the things, they just can't take on anything else right now. But I will be continuing to actively promote it for all
And
of
I think
those.
too, coming out of COVID.
Yes.
And all the work that was done during COVID by those nurses, that to start something new right away, it'd be very difficult.
Yeah, they're happy to just kind of, cruise right now. Join later.
Well, good luck with it. I know as a nurse that would be such an incentive to try to, be recognized for something that I was doing, and also to improve and better my skills and my knowledge base. Yep.
Just a few questions.
Sure.
What do you estimate the time commitment is to get to the various levels? I know it's probably across the board, but.
No, it's, so to reach level 1, they can actually reach level 1 within 6 months. So again, they can only apply and only submit a completed portfolio in October and March. They can get to level 1 within 6 months because I do allow them to count things from 6 months prior. So if they had already joined a committee, for example, or they received a letter from a patient or had started a project before they applied for the PEAK program, within that 6-month window, I will accept that. Then after that is once a year. So they have
My question is more, how much time out of their day?
Oh, out of their day?
With the various activities.
Oh, okay. Gosh, I mean, that's variable. It depends.
All clear. Code pink, all clear. Code pink, all clear.
Yeah, it really depends on what the project is or what the projects are that they are doing. Gosh, it could be anywhere. It's hard to put an actual number on the hours.
Yeah, just more curious.
Yeah.
And then was the program, is this 100% designed here, or is this built off of, known programs, or,
It's
was
100%.
it customized for here, or was it?
It's customized for here, but it does follow a model that is pretty standard. It's pretty standard to have, as Alice said, level 1 or clinical nurse 1, clinical nurse 2. I did benchmark against all of those other organizations and kind of pulled what I thought was the best of each of those, but wanted to make it very specific to us as well. So.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, it's a beautiful
Thank you.
program. Thank you.
And you start off at, I forget the first one, then there's.
Smartest peak, level 1.
Well, no, I mean, it's not a novice, it's
Competent.
competent. So can you skip any of those levels?
No, you have to
go through.
You have to go from one to the next. Yeah, you can't jump a level, but you can stay at a level. So again, as the levels go higher, you have to gain more points. It's much more challenging. Each level gets consistently, more challenging and more time consuming. And so if somebody's just content to stay at level 1, they can stay at level 1. And I don't put any end time frame on it. As long as they are meeting with me on a regular basis and checking in and letting me know their progress and, staying current with it, then they can take as long as they need. Because I know everybody's lives are different and busy. And so they can stay at level 1 for 3 years if they want. They could take a year off and then come back and move to level 2. So I want it to be flexible for them.
Okay. Any comments from our audience?
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
And good luck. Okay, speaking about nurses, we have Jan Ida, who's going to do the state of nursing. And this started because there was a question asked by one of our board members about staffing and how staffing was in nursing. And so that led to having Jan come, and especially during May, since it was Nurses Week this past May.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for having me. And it's, coming off of the trauma program, just speaking, and Damara. Obviously, Damara's work has been instrumental to our nursing group here, and you'll see that as we go through. Let me see. Okay. Oh. Is it going to go? There it goes. So I kind of looked at this as our mindset as we went through this difficult journey of COVID pandemic together, was that through this whole process over the last 3 years, people wanted to know what normacy was and what well-being was. We also continued to try to be innovative, like with Damara in the PEAK program. We pushed to improve patient outcomes. We pushed for nursing excellence. And we still provided that empathy, compassion, and compassion to our patients and each other. So,
Yeah.
oh, the right arrow, there it goes. So I'll start off with incline, the emergency department. Really won't mention the inpatient med surg because there really hasn't been any patients in that realm. So basically, all of our staff there is an emergency room nurse. If we have inpatients, they take care of them. So in the emergency department at Incline, they've completed their pediatric readiness, which was a requirement for their beta assignments for Tier 2. Also at Incline, it's kind of unusual that this is done through an outpatient. It's not actually in the emergency room per se, but they do the IV infusions. So like here at Truckee, when patients need IV infusions, like whether it's reclass, fluids, some of antibiotics, like 6 weeks of antibiotics, instead of traveling all the way over here to Truckee, they're able to have those infusions over at Incline. So the community is very happy for that to be done in the Incline Hospital. And then just like here at Truckee, they've also have also begun the Narcan program. So that is, anybody can come in and ask for Narcan, no questions asked. We just fill out the form and we actually just give out the Narcan. And it's been a pretty successful program, especially with our fentanyl overdoses.
Can I get Narcan? I mean, I can carry it in my purse.
Yes, anybody can come.
You want me to go get you some?
Please.
I know, they give it to me every week. So.
Yeah. So yes, we make sure a lot of our, like Jake is mentioning, a lot of our cancer patients, especially if any of them are on fentanyl or fentanyl patches, we always make sure that they have Narcan.
There is a new street drug that's out. I was at area managers meeting this week, and it's so potent, it's taken paramedics or other people 8 doses of Narcan, so it's a synthetic street drug. It's requiring very large. So anyway, Narcan's very important, but 1 dose may not be enough for some of the new street drugs.
But I just think it's important for everybody to carry it. You never know when you'll need it.
Right. And that's the thing, a lot of family members have Narcan even for their family members, whether they're on a prescription type fentanyl or just because they're worried of what kind of street drugs they're using.
Yeah.
How frequently is it administered in our ER?
In our ER, it's not as administered as much. It's mainly with our EMS partners. So it's, they've been called to a home or called to the street. So by the time they get to us, will we give other doses? Yes, but we're usually not giving the initial dose.
Yeah.
Unless somebody drives up with somebody in the car. So then, whoops, for some reason, okay. So then I'll talk about the Tahoe Forest Emergency Department. As you just heard, the continued trauma improvements, and we just had that ACS verification that they just talked about. All of the full-time RNs in the emergency room became mobile intensive care nurses, which those are the nurses that are giving orders to the paramedics via radio. And so they were all certified, all had to go through classes for that. So they're able to keep the doc from having to be torn away from patient care to answer the radio. All of our RNs are TNCC verified, which means they're trauma certified nurses. And finally, our telestroke kickoff will go live on June 20th. That has been a long process. And so we're looking forward to that, finally, that process going through. The staff has been trained. Believe it or not, we have to retrain the staff because the staff's been trained probably about 2.5 years ago. We started training. So now we're in the process of retraining because it's been so long since we've gotten this contract up and going. Pediatric readiness, just like the Incline ED, and also they have the Narcan program here. They actually started the Narcan program here probably close to 2 years now. And then their beta assignments for their Tier 2, which is what we do for our beta insurance, which then if we meet all the criteria, they come back and give us the money off on our insurance policy. So that one I did. So our Women and Family Department, our OB staff is in the midst right now of training for their own C-sections on their patients. So what this means is currently our model is if you come into the OB department and you're either scheduled for a C-section or your labor doesn't progress and you need a C-section, we have to call the OR team in. And so whether that's day or night, we have to, the ones scheduled, obviously the team is here. But for the other ones, we have to call the teams in. So, and that can also be a bit of an issue if it's a stat C-section for that team trying to get here, especially in our winter, this past winter. So it's a 3-phase process that we are training the OB nurses to be able to do their own C-section. This is done at every OB department in the state of California, but ours. And so it's one thing that we felt like in order to really completely care for our OB patients, we needed to move forward with this. So phase 1, they're almost done with of learning how to do the recoveries on these C-sections. The second phase is we have OB techs now, which are already being trained and learning how to scrub these cases. And then the third phase will be that nurse circulating the case. And so if they have a patient that they've been caring for that has to go to C-section, that same nurse takes that patient and is part of their C-section. The unit has taken on, like the hospital in Quincy, Plumas District, did close their OB services, and so they have been, these patients have a choice of where to go. Most of them could go to Chico, but for whatever reason, we've noticed that they've been choosing Tahoe Forest. And so we're averaging about 3 deliveries a month. They were averaging about 3 or 4 deliveries a month, so most of them are choosing, obviously, to come here. And for the second year in a row, Nevada County is #1. So Nevada County includes us, but it also includes Sierra Nevada Hospital is #1 in the state of California for in-hospital inclusive breastfeeding, which is really amazing and great work on our Women and Family Department on their dedication.
And are they still baby-friendly certified?
Yes, they are. And then they also just were certified, the International Board of Lactation Consultants recognized the unit for excellence in lactation care. So they just have received that award. And then our OB unit is always first to be done on this. And in OB, it's not just the staff, it is also the physicians that are included in the beta. They have just completed their beta site visit, which was excellent. They're finished their quest for 0. So they've successfully completed all 3 of their domains for Tier 2. So basically, we know we're going to get that money back from beta for OB already.
So Jan, as OB is moving to doing their own C-section, how will that change, or will it change their staffing pattern?
It really won't change their staffing pattern. We have a break nurse on night shift who can be that extra set of hands for emergencies plus the nursing supervisor. They'll still be staffed according to the ratio of what patients they have on hand.
And then what about the tech that's going to scrub, I forget what you said her duty is.
It's basically a tech unit clerk, so we use that
Oh, a
person
unit,
as a unit
okay.
clerk when there is no cases, because we only average about 10 C-sections a month.
Okay.
So
they're cross-trained to do
they're
this.
cross-trained, and they're also cross-trained to go to the ICU at night and help out other units. So we're trying to cross-train to make sure that we can, help every unit when they're quiet. ICU staff continues to keep up all their chemo certifications up to date, and they have to do that yearly. The ICU staff has all completed the TCAR program, and that is the trauma care after resuscitation, and that's part of our trauma program. And one thing that during our verification they had commented on is that they really don't see very many ICU units that the complete staff is trained in that. So that was really a kudos for our ICU staff. And then cardiac service, we are just finishing the training on that. The staff is now trained on the devices, which are the pacemakers and the implantable defibrillators that we will be hopefully soon seeing on some of these patients. They will usually have a 23-hour stay in the ICU after these procedures. So Med-Surg has probably had the biggest year. All of their staff now is ACLS and PALS certified. They've also all been trained on cardiac drips. So what happens is we had a lot of cardiac drip patients that were going to the ICU that, according to insurances, were not really ICU admissions. So they considered those step-down patients. So now we've got the staff trained on these drips, and their drips, they cannot, this kind of medication, they can't, titrate it, go up and down on it at all. It has to be a stable medication. And in doing that, several of the staff on their own, they didn't have to do this, did complete the TCAR program in Med-Surg. We increased the number of telebeds, and that's because of those cardiac drips. And then the biggest thing that happened, and thank God this happened before September, October, before we started to see all the RSV admits, as we had already started to improve our pediatric training to facilitate those pediatric admissions. And that really paid off this past RSV season because we saw quite a few admissions of RSV. And then what we also did, instead of having a charge nurse that took exactly the same patient loads that all the other staff on the unit did, what we did is we added this team lead that was really in charge of admissions and discharges. When you look at Med-Surg, when we're busy, they're the ones that get all the flexing that goes on. They're the ones that from like 3 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night, they could have already discharged 6 patients and now they're going to get 10. So they have a big influx of turning people. So this person is there to assist with taking those admissions instead of, people saying they can't take admissions and now the ER is holding these patients and now the ER is backed up. This was a way to kind of eliminate that. And it's been a pilot program for the last 6 months, and it's really, really done well this winter when the ER was busy. OR and ambulatory. Work began with Optum, and I'm sure we've talked about that. That was the efficiency company that came in August of 2022. And they were looking at our OR services for efficiencies and improvements. By October of 2022, changes had begun. The biggest change that we started was the perioperative governance committee had formed. And that includes surgeons, it's 4 surgeons and our staff on that. And we had not really had this in place prior. So what this group does is this is the group that decides, block utilization, block times, issues that are coming up in the OR. This is the group that will decide how those changes are made or what needs to be done about that. As a group, instead of it being told by the director of the OR or an administrator saying this has to be done. So that group has been formed and is doing very well. Dr. Evans and Louis are part of that group, but Dr. Evans is heading that group now. And it is really made some huge strides over the last couple months. So we're very excited about that. Out of Optum's efficiency improvements, one of the things they looked at was the pre-op groups formed, which is forming work on efficiencies between the office, the pre-op clinic, and the pre-op nurses. What was happening is all these groups were working, but they weren't working actually together. So unfortunately, we were calling our patients 2 and 3 times. And so the feedback was not great from the patients saying, you know, hey, this person's already called me and told me that. Now you're telling me the same thing, or this person told me this, now you're telling. So now we've kind of streamlined that process so that we're hoping to only call the patient 1 time during this process. And then in April, Optum completed its review. The recommendations that were given, we're going to continue those improvements moving forward. Then the next big service is endo. So as you well know, endo began mid-April at Incline, and by tomorrow they'll have completed 24 cases since they started. So pretty big ad there and really remarkable. We were going to try to limit to what, 7? 6 a day. And they're doing 12 tomorrow. So, yeah. Very excited how that service has turned out. And it's been huge for the community over there. And then the endo staff here is the same endo staff that's going over to Incline to perform those on Friday. That staff over the last couple years, with a GI doc retiring, then us losing a GI doc, having us get a part-time in, and now finally we're having a full-time in April, they have really juggled to try to keep these patients going, to try to make sure we're doing these procedures in a timely manner and meeting the demands of the community. So that group has really done a phenomenal job.
Has that affected the number then that we're doing here?
Yes, now that we've got GI services fully going, well, we have 1.5 at this point, and we have another one coming on board.
Because if you're having the staff going there, that means they're not being done here.
Well, usually we have Dr. Zovanich here on Friday, while Dr. Nashianda's over there.
Okay.
So, and then we have Dr. Hunt still trying to get some of those cases done.
Okay.
So we are trying to quickly catch that service up. And like I said, they've really done an excellent job of that.
We had to do a lot of work with the state of Nevada.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of licensing work that needed to be done, so Dylan had a huge part, Jan had a huge part, the entire team from the OR. So this is months and months, and I think Judy kind of started it.
Yeah.
Just kept going, so it's just months and months of work, so we're excited.
Well, great job.
Very
then.
exciting. So for case management and care coordination, like you heard Dr. Cooper speak about the patients that are followed up, that is because of care coordination. Case management here in the hospital continues to work with all of our patients. As you probably know, in the state of California, we really can't discharge somebody to homeless, even if they want to be homeless. So that group really does a fabulous job of trying to navigate that and trying to figure out where are we going to place this person, where are we going to send them, how are we going to send them. So they continue to have to work with those very difficult discharges. And then the care coordination staff is the ones that pick up to make sure that you can get in to see the physician. If we've asked you to follow up with the physician in 10 days, how are we guaranteeing that? It's the care coordination, because if we have the patient call on their own, they're probably not going to get the appointment. So by having care coordination work in and out with these offices and to make sure that they're able to get the follow-up care they need. And then like the trauma patients, even the patients that don't live in our area, that are visitors here, are followed up on to make sure, are they getting into the appropriate person for follow-up, if they need to be followed up with an orthopedic or a neuro or a surgeon, to make sure they get that proper follow-up.
How do large cities that have so many homeless,
I don't know how they do it.
how do they manage that?
I mean, there's shelters, they don't, yeah, there's shelters, that, you know, a lot of these places have that are there 24/7. So yes, you probably can discharge them to that shelter, but they're probably only allowed to stay there for 24, 48 hours. And then what happens, you know? But it's difficult. We've sent people to Idaho, to Utah. If we can find a family member, we just can't say, oh, we're sending you there.
Yeah.
We have to document that family member's address, phone number, that we've spoken to them. But we will try to get them, you know, to a home of a family member if that's what we can do.
Yeah.
But no, it's not easy. It's
You said
really
get them to a home. Someone in Idaho, are we putting them on a bus or what will you?
train, bus.
Oh, wow, okay.
But you have to have an ID. So that sometimes is a problem.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can't put you on the train or the bus. I sent somebody in a Lyft yesterday because they didn't have an ID, so Lyft will take somebody with no ID, but, yeah, it's a difficult task.
To Idaho, who's paying for that?
Yeah.
I mean, the cost of the lift is something that we pay for.
Yeah, we have to.
Right. Not
Not Yeah, no. Yeah. So then moving forward, like what was explained with Damara in her PEAK program, we're looking at ways we can retain our staff. We're looking at flexible staff ideas. Our current RN turnover rate is 5.22, which is great compared to the national average of 27.1, but still, we don't really want to, you know, yes, we are going to have some turnover, but we really want to retain the nurses who want to stay and work with us here. So moving forward, UNR have a meeting with UNR in a couple weeks. They have just requested a meeting with us we've been discussing this idea of allowing students to come back here and to do some of their clinical requirements. So we're looking into that. We've just finished our whole shared governance charter that we've redone. We have now 6 shared governance councils that meet monthly or quarterly. And this has staff from every unit represented, all nursing units. And some of the councils are even interdisciplinary, so we have people from radiology and lab and other entities on that. And then we have had discussions, and Damara has been part about this, is that maybe at some point we may have to develop our own new grad program here in order to have nurses. From what is going on in the state of California isn't as hard off as some of the other states, but the nursing shortage is real, and there's real issues with it, and I hope to not see us in that place. So if that means starting a new grad program here, and we feel like we can support that, that's something we're looking to for the future. And then just to continue to address burnout, I mean, it's out there, it's talked about, but how do we continue to look at that with our staff, and what are we doing for that? And is it burnout from COVID? Is it burnout from their job? Is it burnout personal? And how can we navigate that with them? And, you know, if it's burnout because you feel like you need another type of position in nursing, are we able to accommodate that? Are you able to switch to another unit? You know, we're looking at all different ways with the staff to really try to help them with that.
I understand Dr. Kreis has taken up that banner. With the physicians, does it also apply to the nurses?
No, he's really just on the physician end of it. On nursing, we've chosen to look at it more with our different council groups, of looking at ways of what we hear from the staff and what they see. And those council groups have staff members on them, so they're able to kind of get the feel of what's going on out there and what they would like to see for us to help with that.
Okay.
So any other questions?
So
That's it?
Could you expand on that a little bit in terms of the burnout? So you see, you're seeing, from what I understand you to be saying, you're seeing burnout with individual nurses.
Correct.
And you're addressing it on an individual basis. So you don't see a group problem or a systemic problem or anything like that. It's more on an individual basis.
Right, except for, I would say for the ICU nurses, the burnout that they had was real. You know, through COVID, that group never had a break. That ICU was full all the time, and it was difficult during that time to figure out how we were going to move through this and try to figure out how we could give them breaks or how we could make life, you know, we did all kinds of little things to try to really break that up. But the biggest thing they wanted was, you know, hey, we kind of miss our days of being canceled. Well, then you come to this year,
Yeah.
and, you know, the ICU was closed for 2 weeks, 6 days in a row. And so now their tune is kind of like, okay, we had our days off. We kind of want to work again. But I do think that that break of the ICU closing on and off has made a difference for them. We also did some flexible staffing in the ICU, especially for night shift. You know, it's hard to work 12 hours on nights. And so what we did is we flexed around our FTEs and created a few more part-time positions instead of full-time. And just that extra day really helped. And then, you know, they all have wellness days that they get every quarter too. And so just making sure that they use those, otherwise they'll lose them. And during COVID, sometimes it was hard to give those days off if we were short-staffed. But now they're definitely being able to use those days in the quarter to make sure they're getting their wellness days. So the ICU was one of the groups that I found as a group was pretty burned out. But they are definitely improving. And then, yes, you did see individuals in certain departments that, you know, and a lot of it was because of their children too. You know, they were homeschooling children, so they were teacher, they were parent, they were coming to work full-time. So now that some of that has eased, I think you see a little bit better of a turnout with the staff.
Well, great to hear that there are so many things being put in place to help them. Again, it's not always just the work, like you say, that's giving the burnout. It's their life, and how do you help them relook at their life so that they can feel like they're accomplishing something?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any comments from our audience? Well, thank you, Jan. It was just really, it was encouraging to know that all these things are happening and nurses are taking advantage of things and asking for help when they need it.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting, some of the things we put in place, and then I think it's very exciting for the clinical ladder that they've been asking for. So I'm glad that that came to fruition. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So then we'll go on to our, we didn't pull anything, so board committee reports. The only one that I know that met was the governance committee, and we met early in May. We looked over the board self-assessment and had a long discussion about that neutral position on the scale. And what the decision was by the committee is just leaving the self-assessment tool alone. Leave it and look at it again and see if those neutrals go away in terms of people using them. Because we had neutrals and we also had do not know. So the do not knows decreased, but the neutrals increased. So again, we're just going to pay attention to that the next time around. You might have seen already on your Board Effects homepage that we have the schedule for the iProtein education sessions. And initially, we were going to have discussions about it, but what we looked at now is having it in conjunction with programs that are being presented at the meeting, which gives us a little background on it and may give us more insight into questions to ask about how things are going, like with high reliability, which is our next one. We revised our charter, and it was more editorial than anything else. I did want to remind all of our board members that the Association of California Hospital Districts annual conference is going to be here in Tahoe. It's going to be at Everline, used to be known as Squaw Creek. And it'll be September 13th through the 15th. And we are members of ACHD. It's a great time to make relationships with other district hospitals and a good time to hear what's going on in California.
What are the
outside.
dates again?
September 13th through the 15th.
Through the 15th.
And also, there'll be town halls held in October, and hopefully Harry will be giving us invitations to come, and remember, 2 at a time.
2 at a time.
Any other, I don't think any other committees have met, but any other board members want to give a report?
I went to, I was able to go to the foundation meeting to fill in for our world traveler here. And it was great. It reminded me, there's so much energy in that room. It's really, really remarkable. They talked about fundraising. In particular, one of the points of pride was that they had just signed over a $500,000 check to contribute to the purchase of the 3T MRI, which was, as you can imagine, as I said, a point of pride for them. They had used the MRI as their best, what's the term? Area of greatest need for the last few years, and so that's how they were able to accumulate so much money towards that. And then they also talked about the employee giving program, which was really quite interesting in that there were over 300 employees who contributed to the voluntary program, and it garnered over $60,000.
Oh, nice.
And Martina and I were talking earlier about how wonderful it is in that the group of employees gets to choose how that money is spent and how it's used, where it sees the needs within the hospital.
Never a
also.
box for IT.
So, so I guess this year they purchased a Panda warming, a piece of.
For the baby.
Warmer for the ED, so that was fun. They also talked about future events and how to balance the friend-raising and the fundraising of events with use of staff time, because it's so labor-intensive. And it's not really a sustaining program for the medical center. It's episodic money that gets raised, and so how to balance those things out. Incline is going to have its amazing Beach Boys concert in July, which should be incredible. And I guess they're talking about reviving, resurrecting, whatever you want to call it, the Best of Tahoe Chefs, but in a different format. It's just possibly a different format, a little less labor intensive, and all of that. So that will come down the road. And, we'll see about it. But again, there's just tons of energy and good feeling.
That meeting was earth-shaking.
It was earth-shaking. That was when we all got our notifications that we were about to have an earthquake.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It all went off at the same time.
Everybody's phone went off in that room, and we felt it.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely felt it. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was great. So that's my report.
Well, thank you for that, and that's great to hear about the foundation.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Anytime, seriously, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay. Any further comments from any other board member? If not, the meeting will be adjourned.
All right.
Anybody want one?